Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy. Up first, hazardous weather graphic showing the high wind warning zone there from, let's see, Cape Fairweather to Cape Spencer, including Yakutat, and we also had it out there for the extreme northern panhandle there. And seeing that's out for until 4 p.m. Friday afternoon, so about ready to end here as the storm moves through. But winds gusted anywhere from 70 to 75 miles per hour in places there, like Deception Hills, which is southeast of Yakutat, had a gust 75 miles per hour. Otherwise, there's a flood watch out for the greater Seward area. That kicks into effect tomorrow evening as heavy rains with the next storm that's going to be tracking northward late tonight and throughout the day tomorrow into Kodiak Island. And then tomorrow evening, that'll be lifting in to the Seward area, and some pretty heavy rains expected along the Kenai Peninsula into Prince William Sound. With that, as that system moves northward farther to the west than the one today did. Up to the north, wind advisories here for the Alaska Range, and that's west of the Toe Cutoff. Through the passes, gusts 50 miles an hour. That wind advisory is out until 4 p.m. Sunday. And then farther to the north here, north of the Alaska Range advisory areas, we've got winter weather advisories here for the Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, northward there across the upper Yukon Valley to Beaver, Chuck-Yitzhak, Fort Yukon. And that's out until 4 p.m. Saturday. And that's for areas above 2,000 feet that may receive 2 to 4 inches of snow later tonight and tomorrow, with a little bit cooler air coming in, and so it's going to make quite slick driving conditions for those areas. On to satellite imagery, you can see quite vividly the strong storm that came northward today right across the Gulf of Alaska. Storm force winds associated with it and the high wind warning areas there, along with some pretty heavy rainfall, 24-hour amounts over 2 inches. 2 1/3 inches falling at Montague Island, and Portage had about 2 inches of precipitation during the same time period, and also into the northern panhandle, 24-hour rainfall amounts there in the Glacier Bay area, as much as 2.5 inches. And Juneau picked up about 1 inch of rain, Cordova about 1.8 inches with gusts 55 to 60 miles an hour as that system rolled through. You can see a lot of moisture streaming northward, again precipitation. Started out as snow in Northway, changed over to rain. And again, the rain-snow situation depends on your elevation time of day here with this coming northward. And probably a little bit milder air to the north, but the precipitation cut off drastically as you moved west. Just a few sprinkles, say, in around Anchorage today. But windy, Madanuska Valley, Palmer, Wasilla, seeing winds gusting 45 to 50 miles an hour earlier today. With the good pressure falls as this approached out of the northeast there. Those have since diminished, but lots of clouds spreading all the way up to Arctic Village there, but dry slot here from northeast Bristol Bay and the southwest coast. Real thin clouds, no high clouds anyway, right up into the northwest interior. And then some areas of light snow, very light for the north slope areas on out to the Arctic coast. Nothing really significant at all. And we have this front pushing eastward here with it's a much weaker system than the one that came up across the Gulf of Alaska today. And this is continuing to weaken and really losing the winds, not a factor at all. Precipitation pretty light and just isolated showers back out to the west of that. Mostly cloudy over the northern Bering Sea, but showers north of the Pribilofs and south of St. Lawrence Island today. There may be a few light showers along the southwest coast, and probably some will move across the Pribilofs during the evening hours tonight. Looking at this again, this system, once it gets inland, will weaken quite rapidly after being a pretty potent storm force low here as it approached the coastline. But that will, this afternoon, down about 969 millibars, again with the areas of heavy rains and strong winds, a tight pressure field with that. Again, 75 miles an hour top wind gusts I could find at Deception Hills. They're at an elevation of about 2,200 feet and right along the coastline, so you'd expect stronger winds with those conditions. Otherwise, we had winds gusting to 70 miles an hour. Again, at Cape Decision had gusts of 70 miles an hour and gusts over 60 miles an hour at Middleton Island. Pretty windy conditions there all along the North Gulf Coast of Cordova, with the winds coming around the back side of that, gusting about 45 miles an hour at AKwx, Kodiak Island there. And lighter winds though across the Alaska Peninsula with a few isolated showers. And then this front moving rapidly northward here, bringing some light rain and snow in across the eastern Tanana Valley 40-mile country, but that really cuts off back to the west. Had some snow with this system. Western Alaska, or western Brooks Range along mountains could have had several inches. Water equivalent, Howard Pass had about 3/10 of an inch. That could work out to about 3 inches of snow, and mixed conditions through this band right through here into this leftover old trough. Here's the front coming across the Aleutians. We'll see tonight that low center tracks off to the southeast, and the front weakens. That'll bring a chance of rain into the Nikolsky and Alaska Dutch Harbor area, and it looks like a kind of a wet night for Atka, maybe improving for Adak with scattered showers along a trough on out to the Shemya and Attu areas. Otherwise, isolated rain and snow showers along the southwest coast up to St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait. Mostly dry over the northwest. Low center weakening, pulling northward over toward the border at about 992 millibars, but a trough back to the southwest. So rain will start tapering off. It's going to stay quite windy. You can see still quite a few lines on the chart here. So winds will be lighter, but they're not going to end all together, but the rainfall will eventually gradually start tapering off. Here's the next system down here to the south, the Kodiak Island. You'll be in a break tonight there with maybe some clearing, as well as the Kenai Peninsula. You'll see tomorrow afternoon, heavy rain and wind move into Kodiak Island and start to catch the western Gulf of Alaska, although rainfall by late afternoon may reach the southern coast of the Panhandle. Otherwise, you're going to have some lingering showers with a very weak trough right over the area tomorrow. Much drier over the eastern interior, Northway Togue 40-mile country. And probably those winds will drop off a little bit there till this thing rolls on up. But leftover moisture, look for an area of snow up over the northwest. Again, winter weather advisories out through tomorrow through this area, 2 to 4 inches of snow. And again, above 2,000 feet. So it's going to depend on your elevation here, how much snow you see, and if you see any at all. Otherwise, no change, maybe a few flurries scattered around the Arctic coast and North Slope, maybe partly sunny in the afternoon, midday over the northwest interior, Noatak Valley. Kobuk Valley, maybe even the Seward Peninsula, but some scattered rain or snow showers. St. Lawrence Island, scattered rain, mostly rain or rain, fog, and drizzle here over the northern Bering Sea, but this low slowly moving eastward will keep a chance of rain in over Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, but look for gale, possibly storm force winds coming up with this low tomorrow afternoon and night. And then that thing tracks up to northern Bristol Bay there, right up, setting up right near Dillingham in the afternoon at about 982 millibars. And south to north flow, that's going to keep it quite windy across southern Alaska, Turnagain Arm, Anchorage Hillside, and all the mountain passes of southern Alaska here. Heaviest rain now shifting over toward Yakutat with the main frontal boundary, having trouble really getting much farther east than that. Northward weakens, lee side of the mountains, look for some clearing, and another round of heavy rain for the southern Kenai Peninsula. Once again, isolated showers out to the west. Lows for tonight, anywhere from the mid-20s over the eastern interior to mid to upper teens through the Brooks Range, and 20s along the Arctic coast, near 40 out over the Bering Sea, lower 40s for the Aleutians, and mid to upper 40s for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow 50 to 55 for the southeast coast, 45 to 52 southern Alaska, upper 30s to near 40 central interior, 20s from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. Lows the following morning, Sunday morning, lower 20s on the Arctic coast, mid-teens Brooks Range, back into the 20s, looks like 25 to 30 for the Tanana Valley. lower 40s for southern Alaska, lower to mid for the Panhandle. And then your afternoon highs shaping up like this, 50 to 55 again for the southeast coast, and upper 40s to maybe lower 50s southern Alaska, definitely lower 50s for Bristol Bay, 20s from the Brooks Range on out to the coast, and 35 to 45 in the central interior areas. Out in the west, upper 40s for the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic, a lot of IFR here across southern Alaska from the southwest coast, actually St. Lawrence Island there, eastward across the Kuskokwim Valley, hitting the Alaska Range and up and over into the Kanawha Valley there on up to the White Mountains. And a big area IFR from the Brooks Range on out to the central eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise marginal VFR, Bering Sea, Aleutians, and breaking out a little bit here along the Alaska Peninsula. But marginal VFR, Gulf of Alaska, becomes IFR, northern and northeast, southeast coast. And not much change here in the afternoon, maybe a little more marginal VFR, but southern Prince of Wales Island looks like from about maybe AKwx southward to Heidelberg, VFR possibly, otherwise IFR, coast range here into possibly the Wrangell Mountains. Marginal VFR, southern Alaska, IFR now still holding out over the Yukon and down to about the Kuskokwim River and Nunivak Island, and a little bit less, but still holding faster in the east side of the Beaufort Sea coast, North Slope, and the upper Yukon Valley areas, marginal for the Bering Sea and Aleutians. Not much change in that for Sunday morning, mostly marginal out over the Bering Sea and Aleutians north to the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula. IFR holding there over the central Arctic coast, central North Slope areas. Upper Yukon Valley a little bit there to the Brooks Range, another batch here farther to the southwest, and then the other one there along the southwest coast. A little bit of IFR lingering, North Gulf Coast, right up to the Wrangell Mountains there. Denali Highway, a little bit of VFR trying to break out over this Sitton Valley as well as Bristol Bay. Marginal for Kodiak. Marginal VFR mostly for the southeast coast, and for the afternoon breaks out to VFR. Wrangell, Petersburg, on down to Annette and Metlakatla with marginal VFR along the coast, and the northern areas still holding IFR, Lincoln Canal Glacier Bay, IFR North Gulf Coast again, and inland there to the Wrangell Mountains, east side of the Kenai Peninsula and eastern Prince William Sound, also coming back into the picture, IFR. Eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, otherwise marginal out into the Bering Sea. Really no change out there, pretty marginal over much of the area, IFR, North Slope in the Arctic coast. Passes Anatuvik, IFR becoming marginal, and Adigan, marginal VFR becoming VFR for the Lake Clark and Merrill, improving, lowest conditions early on, improving to marginal, maybe even better, especially for Merrill late in the day. For a short time before the next system rolls in. Rainy IFR becoming marginal, and windy IFR becoming VFR. For Isabel, IFR becoming marginal VFR into the afternoon, hopefully a little better. And Mentasta definitely will become VFR probably by late morning. And Tanita, marginal VFR trends toward VFR into the afternoon, into early evening. Portage, though, seeing the effects of that next storm coming up, starting out VFR, and then in the afternoon, big surge of moisture comes rolling on up. You'll be going VFR or IFR maybe as early as mid-afternoon. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, 4,000 feet, central, southern interior. Really most of the panhandle as well. You see 6,000 feet now down just south of the Queen Charlotte's, 2,000 feet or less northern interior and out to the Arctic coast, about 2,000 over the Bering Sea, so really not much of a thermal gradient now. As a result, the jets well to the south of the area and off to the southeast. For the icing, got that surge, surge coming northward here with the next system. The original one, the one coming through today, that lifts up into the northeast interior, weakens, so some isolated moderate rime icing above about 4,000 feet, rime maybe mixed, and then some heavier rime icing above about 5,000 coming up with that moisture, definitely hitting Kodiak Island, spreading in toward the central and north coast of the Panhandle in the afternoon. Jet stream, here's that upper low lifting northward and really weakening from what it is today. And the next one here developing, really putting a squeeze on the atmosphere here, and that's going to be coming up a little farther west than the previous one. That's going to clobber Kodiak Island, eventually the western North Gulf Coast. And otherwise, I mentioned the jet stream well south of the Aleutians and cutting in the strongest portion of it to the Queen Charlotte Islands. 9,000-foot wind flow chart, big storm coming up toward Kodiak. It's going to act southeasterlies 50 to 60 knots at this elevation, increasing in the afternoon up to 35, and the same thing at 3,000 feet, and turbulence pretty rough along the North Gulf Coast of Kodiak Island.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know,
okay,
since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show.
Okay.
How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because
Okay.
the polar bear is white and the snowstorm is white.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a creature, would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow,
right,
a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice?
Ah.
All three of these are white. The snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud? Right. How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white. Right. And we've got you know, a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice? Okay. It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit, see, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at. Part of that's visible light, what we see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find.
Oh yeah. This is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back. And that's not the way it works in visible. You know, visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that. And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful. And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savunga or Gamble and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, but what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clear, so you can fly right through there, visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels. The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. You know, I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We go on long car rides, and we do all the work in these activity books to, you know, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who are trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Right? Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of the same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Dehne. We can see the shadow of Dehne over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Dehne at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska weather facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Inside the Barrier Islands, still slow ice growth going on from the Central Coast eastward. That gap slowly narrowing there off toward the east, and this area will continue to drift westward and see a slow increase in the sea ice conditions here on the eastern and central coast, maybe even back to the west for the next 4 or 5 days. Coastal water forecast tomorrow, south coast of the Panhandle. South winds 15 to 20 knots, 15 to 16 foot seas. Southeast 20 on the north side. Still pretty high seas up to possibly as high as 20 feet. Southeast 15 for Clarence Strait, 25 knots southeasterlies for Stevens Passage, and gales for Lynn Canal with 6 foot seas. Taking a look at the outlook for Sunday. Southeast 30 on the south coast there, but for the remainder of the coastline, all gale force on the winds, up to 40 knots here on the north coast. So seas up to 20, maybe 21 feet, and gale force gusts continue for Lynn Canal and also for Stevens Passage at 35 knots with south-southeast winds. Clarence Strait, southeast 20, seas 4 feet. Prince William Sound, east winds 20 knots tomorrow, seas 4 feet. And east-southeast for the North Gulf Coast at 30 knots. And then 40-knot winds tomorrow afternoon with the next storm coming up from the south there for the Barren Islands, and winds increasing to 35 knots for Kamishak Bay, northeast 20 for southern Cook Inlet. Then gales are out for Cook Inlet on Sunday, east-northeast 35, north of the Forelands 40 knots, south side, east 45, almost a storm but not quite for Kamishak Bay with 12-foot seas. Full gales there, south 40, 28-foot seas for the Barren Islands, and south-southeast 35 to 40 for the North Gulf Coast, seas still over 25 feet. Prince William Sound, southeast 30, seas 7 feet. And for Shelikof Strait tomorrow, northeast 40 knots, east side of Kodiak, east 35, 40-knot northeasterlies here down to Castle Cape from Sitkinak, northerlies here on the Pacific side of the peninsula at 35, but much lighter on the north side there, 15, northeast 20 for Bristol Bay. North 30 knots here, Bristol Bay all the way down to Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, northwest 25. Gales, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, west 35 knots, south 40 up the east side of Kodiak. And for the eastern Aleutians tomorrow, not too bad, mostly easterly, 10 to 15 knots, seas 4 to as high as 11 feet. Central Aleutians, north-northwest, 20, and 25-knot winds, say from Amchitka to Kiska, and then back down to 20 for Shimi and Attu. Those get even lighter on Sunday, 15 knots, about 20 here to Adak to Atka, northwest, 20 to 25, and then back down to 20 here from Mac Island. Unalaska Island, small craft advisories northwest of 25. And for the southwest coast, get out of the way, northeast 10 to 15, southeast 10 for the Pribilofs, 20 knots St. Matthew Island, just 15 knots there for St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound. And then for Sunday, north 20 in the Sound, 25-knot northerly winds, small craft advisories from St. Lawrence Island all the way down the southwest coast, even 30 knots so south of Nunivak Island, 25-knot winds for the Pribilofs. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, east 20 knots, lighter, central coast and west side down to about 15, actually all the way to Cape Thompson, turning northeast, 15 Cape Thompson to Wales. And then for Sunday, Wales to Cape Thompson, north 30 knots, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, northeast 25, east 15 on the west side, 20 knots on the central coast, and then some good 30-knot easterlies for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight, look for some flurries, clouds, patchy fog, nothing significant there. Some precipitation is moving northward, trending towards snow above 2,000 feet, 2 to 4 inches. Winter weather advisory out through 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Conditions improve here. North Gulf Coast, high wind warning ends. Rain starts to lighten up, but the winds are going to stay quite brisk there across the southeast coast. Here's the next storm coming up from the south. Tomorrow spreads, probably in the morning hours, will spread heavy wind and rain back into Kodiak Island. This thing tracking farther to the west than the last one did, which tomorrow is off into Canada and pretty much gone, with some leftover moisture through here, actually a trough hanging back in that area. So winter weather advisories that I mentioned out from Fairbanks northward, and then wind advisories for the Alaska Ranges. This thing lifts north, and we'll see on Sunday, the front pushes rain into the northern panhandle, stays dry to the southeast there, and moderate rain, gusty winds, southern Alaska, heaviest along the coast. Pretty windy though, right up across the Alaska Peninsula into the Tanana Valley, and drier back to the west.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.